On one side of the world, millions of people prostrate themselves 5 times a day, believing in one God, singular, without partner. On another side, people pray before hundreds of deity statues, each with their own power and domain. And somewhere else entirely, there is a great spiritual tradition that doesn't even place a creator God at the center of its teachings at all. The question is, why so different? Does that mean one must be wrong and another right? Or is this about different angles of vision towards something that human reason, in truth, cannot fully grasp? In this video, we will explore how 5 major traditions, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, and a few others, understand the concept of divinity. Not to determine who is most correct, but to appreciate the richness of how human beings make meaning of something transcendent, something that goes beyond themselves. I'll be honest from the start, this is a sensitive topic, but precisely because of that, it's important to discuss it with a cool head, clear sources, and respect for all beliefs. If you're ready, let's begin. Before diving into each religion, we need a basic framework. In comparative religion studies, there are 3 major terms used to classify how people understand God. First, monotheism. This is the belief that there is only one God, personal, all-knowing, and typically regarded as the creator of the universe. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are the prime examples of monotheistic faiths, though, as we'll see, each has its own emphasis on what one actually means. Second, polytheism. This is the belief in many gods or goddesses, each with their own role, power, and domain. Ancient Greek or Egyptian mythology are classic examples. But interestingly, some religions often labeled as polytheistic from the outside, like Hinduism, are far more complex than that label suggests, and we'll unpack that later. Third, pantheism. This is a concept that's a little harder to grasp. The belief that God is not a separate being from the universe, but that God is the universe itself. There is no separation between creator and creation. Everything merges into one single reality. There's one more important term to know, nonetheism, sometimes called religious atheism. This refers to spiritual traditions that don't make the existence of a creator God their central teaching. Buddhism, in its earliest form, is often placed in this category, not because it denies the sacred, but because its focus lies elsewhere, on the law of cause and effect, and the path toward liberation from suffering. These 4 frameworks, monotheism, polytheism, pantheism, and nonetheism, will be our map as we explore the 5 great religions. But keep one thing in mind. These boxes are only tools. In reality, many religions are far richer, and their nuances don't always fit neatly into one category. That's exactly what we'll discover. Let's begin with the religion that has over 2 billion followers worldwide, Christianity. Part 1. Case Study, Islam and Christianity. Let's start with Islam, a religion with over 1.9 billion followers worldwide. The concept of God in Islam centers on one word, Tawhid. It means the absolute and undivided oneness of Allah. This isn't one in a mathematical sense, it's one in the purest possible meaning. Nothing resembles him, nothing equals him, and nothing is worthy of worship except him. This concept is summed up most concisely in one of the shortest chapters of the Quran, Surah Al-Ikhlas, often called the essence of Tawhid. It states that Allah is one, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is begotten, and there is nothing comparable to him. In Islamic understanding, Allah is also transcendent, meaning he exists beyond space, time, and any physical form. Allah is not depicted in any visual form, neither in art nor imagination, because the human mind, in all its limitations, cannot truly comprehend his essence. That is why you will almost never find visual representations of God in Islamic tradition, in stark contrast to some other traditions we'll discuss. So let's move to Christianity, the religion with the largest number of followers in the world, over 2.3 billion. On the surface, Christianity also claims to be monotheistic, believing in one God, but there is one concept that makes it unique and often misunderstood from the outside, the Trinity. The Trinity is the belief that the one God exists as 3 persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's crucial to understand. In mainstream Christian theology, this is not 3 separate gods. It is one divine essence, understood to exist simultaneously as 3 persons. This concept is often illustrated by analogies, though none are truly perfect, such as water existing as liquid, ice, or steam, yet remaining the same substance. It is precisely the concept of the Trinity that leads some outside the Christian tradition to question whether this is truly pure monotheism. But for Christians themselves, it is understood as one God, not three, only present in three persons with distinct roles. Unlike Islam's emphasis on absolute transcendence, Christianity has one additional distinctive element: the concept of incarnation. This is the belief that God, in the person of the Son, once entered the world directly in human form, Jesus Christ. This is a profoundly fundamental theological difference between Islam and Christianity, the question of whether God can, or ever did, take on a form that could be touched and seen by human beings. So if we compare briefly, Islam emphasizes absolute undivided oneness, a God who is entirely transcendent, without form, without image. Christianity is also monotheistic, but with an internal structure of three persons in one essence, and the belief that God once appeared in human form. Both are rooted in the Abrahamic tradition, both claim to trace back to the same source of revelation from long ago, yet how they each understand, the one has developed into two quite distinct theological directions. Next, we move to a tradition that is far more complex and far more frequently misunderstood from the outside: Hinduism. Part 2. Case Study: Hinduism and Buddhism. Now we enter one of the traditions most frequently misunderstood from the outside: Hinduism. At first glance, the impression might be polytheism: many gods, many statues, many names. There's Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesha, Saraswati, and hundreds of others. But the moment we go deeper into its philosophy, the picture becomes far more complex. At its deepest root, Hinduism recognizes the concept of Brahman, the ultimate reality, formless, which is the source of all that exists. In other words, the deities worshipped in daily ritual are understood as manifestations or faces of one and the same divine reality. This concept has its own term in religious studies: henotheism, the worship of one deity as supreme at a given time, while still holding that all deities originate from the same one God. The clearest example of this is the Trimurti, the three principal deities most often recognized as the face of Hinduism. Brahma is the creator of the universe, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the destroyer. But here is the key point: the three are not understood as three separate gods. The Trimurti is the concept of one Brahman manifesting in three forms: Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. If that sounds familiar, one essence, three manifestations, you're not mishearing it. The structure does have a logical resemblance to the Trinity concept in Christianity, though the theological context and historical background are entirely different. Interestingly, in practice, many Hindus do focus their worship on one particular deity as primary. For instance, Vaishnavites centered on Vishnu, or Shaivites centered on Shiva. But this is not a contradiction, it's a real-life example of the henotheism we mentioned. One deity is worshipped as the center, but all are still understood to originate from the same source. So if asked, is Hinduism polytheism or monotheism? The most accurate answer is both, and neither fully. Hinduism has many faces of deity, but is rooted in one supreme reality. This is why Hinduism is often cited as the most complex example on the spectrum of pantheism and henotheism. Now we shift to a tradition that takes a completely different direction: Buddhism. While Islam, Christianity, and Hinduism all speak of God or a divine reality as the center of their teachings, Buddhism, at least in its earliest form, does not make that its primary focus. The historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, never claimed to be a messenger of God, and never explicitly taught the existence or non-existence of a creator God. Buddhism's focus lies elsewhere, in the Four Noble Truths, the law of cause and effect known as karma, and the path toward liberation from suffering known as nirvana. This is why Buddhism is often categorized as non-theistic, not because it denies the sacred, but because it places the question of God as something not particularly relevant to the search for liberation itself. But, just as with Hinduism, it's not quite that simple. As Buddhism spread and developed across different regions, particularly in the Mahayana school that flourished in China, Tibet, and East Asia, many figures emerged who are venerated in ways resembling deity worship, such as various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, enlightened beings believed to help others attain liberation. So, in terms of ritual practice, some Buddhist traditions visually resemble devotion to many divine figures, even though philosophically, at its core, this remains different from the concept of deity gods in Hinduism or a personal god as in Islam and Christianity. So if we draw the thread together, Islam and Christianity both emphasize a personal transcendent God, and Buddhism takes an entirely different path, not centering God as the focus, yet still holding space for the sacred in its own form. These four traditions point to one important truth. Human beings across different corners of the world, in different cultural isolations, have all tried to answer the most fundamental question, what lies beyond ourselves? And the answers, it turns out, can vary tremendously. Part 3. Closing and Reflection. So, let's bring together what we've explored. Islam teaches Tawhid, the absolute oneness of God, transcendent, formless, without partner. Christianity is also monotheistic, but with a unique internal structure, three persons within one divine essence, and the belief that God once entered the world as a human being. Hinduism takes us into more complex territory, one supreme reality called Brahman, manifesting in many faces of deity, binding polytheism and monotheism together in a framework called henotheism. And Buddhism takes an entirely different road, shifting the focus away from the question of God, toward the path of liberation from suffering itself. At the start of this video, we used 4 frameworks to map these traditions: monotheism, polytheism, pantheism, and nontheism. But after that journey, I hope you also see what I see. Those boxes help us begin, but reality is far more fluid. Christianity, the monotheistic, has a complex 3-person structure. Hinduism, often labeled polytheistic, is rooted in one single reality. Buddhism, the nontheistic, still holds space for the sacred. Human beings, wherever and whenever, seem to face the same question. There is something that transcends us, something greater than what we can see and touch. The difference is only in how each tradition tries to answer it, through language, symbols, and frameworks of thought shaped by their own history and culture. This video is not here to say one answer is more correct than another. Its purpose is simple: to understand before we judge. And hopefully, by understanding how others make meaning of the sacred, we also come to appreciate our own beliefs more deeply, or at the very least, come to appreciate that this question has never been simple for anyone to answer. I'm curious, of the 4 traditions we discussed, which did you find most interesting or most surprising to learn about? Or perhaps there's another tradition not mentioned here that you think deserves its own video: Judaism, Sikhism, or indigenous beliefs like Kagyan or Kaharingan. Write it in the comments, and let's explore it together. If this video was useful to you, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next comparative religion video. See you in the next one.